Here's how the game turn works. The first thing that happens is something called the slave catcher phase. So bad guys get to move. We roll and resolve the slave catcher and move them die. Here are the 2 dice. As you can see, there are different shapes and colors on this die, which corresponds to the slave catcher token. When we roll these 2 dice, we look at the color, so brown. The brown slave catcher would move 2 spots on the white arrow. If you roll this symbol, this is a good thing because it means the slave catchers do not move that turn. So let's roll for our start of turn. Brown 3. Oh boy, that's probably not a good thing. Let's take a look at the board. Brown's over here and it's going to move 3 spaces towards this white arrow. So white is actually heading sort of southwest from New York down to Philadelphia, that's 1, and then into Washington, D.C., 2, and the third movement will actually move it down to the rural areas of the United States. So that was a pretty bad roll because the slave catchers are very close to our plantations, and that makes it tougher for us to sneak past them. Next, we have the planning phase, and we can take up to a total of 2 conductor, fundraising, and or support tokens. Before I talk about the tokens, we should know what the win conditions are. We win the game if we move the required number of slaves to freedom in Canada, as specified on the victory condition card. For 2 players, we need to free 10 slaves. The second thing we need to do is we need to purchase all of the support tokens in the game. So that's part of the tokens, the 3 types of tokens. And the third thing we need to do is finish the round without losing the game. In terms of losing, well, we lose if the slaves lost track on the victory condition card is filled and another slave needs to be added. So looking at this board once again, if we lose 16 slaves, it gets filled up like this. If we lose 16 slaves and a 17th slave needs to be added to the board, we've lost the game. Also, we lose the game if we don't win before the end of round 8. And that basically is when our slave market cards will run out. For the planning phase, there are 3 types of tokens that we can buy. The first one is the support tokens. And to win the game, as we learned, we need to buy all of these tokens. There are 2 in the first period, 3 in the second, and 2 in the third. Support tokens are always $10 per token. And the price is on the board. And you can see it's $10. The next type of token is the conductor token. Conductor tokens, their cost is above that particular token. So in the first period, things are cheaper. The conductor token is $2, but then it gets more expensive. So in the second period, it's $3, and in the third period, it is $4. These tokens allow you to move slaves during the game. In the case of this first period token, this token allows us to move 3 slaves, 1 space each. The final type of token is the fundraising token, and they are actually free, so there's no cost above that token. This first one here in the first period is this green color token, and it allows us to raise $1 for each slave on a green southern space or city. If we look on the board, the green space is the southern part of the United States, and then the blue is the northern part, obviously. But when we do fundraise, we basically look at these green spots and see how many slaves are on there. So in this case, if I use the green fundraise token, I would raise $3 because there's 3 slaves on the green southern part of the United States. So then for the third period, the tokens are actually blue now because during that part of the game, you probably have more slaves in the northern part of the US. And that basically allows you to fundraise for each slave on the blue spots of the map. Let's plan what we want to do. I think what I'll do is I'll buy some conductor tokens for sure. We don't have enough money to buy the support token. We have $8 to begin, and the support tokens are 10. But let's spend the $2 for the preacher. He is going to get a conductor token, and actually Same with the station master. She will also get a $2 to spend $2 to get a conductor token. And they'll also each take a fundraising token. So we have 2 of these and 2 of these. I should also mention that you can only buy tokens from the next period once you've purchased all of the support tokens in the current period. So before I move on to the purple tokens, I have to buy both of these support tokens. And then before I move on to green, I have to buy all 3 support tokens from the purple period. Next, we have the action phase. And so starting with the lead player, the player can take any or all of the actions in any order. The things that we could do is play some of our tokens, conductor or fundraising. We can play a second conductor or fundraising token. We can buy and resolve an abolitionist card. We can gain a benefit of our roll card, which is here. And we can use the roll card's one-time special ability. So on the roll card, this top part is every round you get this benefit, and the bottom part is once per game. Once you use this once per game ability, you flip the card over, and it would just be decoration, but you still retain your once per round ability. One thing you can also do is pass on the action phase, and instead you'll take $3 from the bank. So here's the game plan. At the end of our round, when our players have completed our actions, we need to get some more slaves into the plantations because, well, slaves have escaped, and so the plantations have to buy more slaves from the slave market. Looking at the slave market queue, the upcoming card has 6 slaves. Okay, so what you have to do when this ends is you fill up these spots with new slaves. And if there's ever more slaves to be put on the board than there are spots, so when all these spots are filled up, these slaves that cannot be put here, so let's say I fill up these 3 and 2 more, we have 1 left over. This leftover slave is a lost slave. So he or she goes on to the lost slave board, and that counts as 1 towards our 16 lost slaves. So it's very important to work to free the slaves, move them up towards Canada, and leave space so that when the slave market phase comes around, we have sufficient spots for the incoming slaves. Okay, so we have 6 incoming, as I mentioned. Let's think about how to move these slaves up. We have the preacher. And actually, the first thing he's going to do is he gains $1 during his action phase, so he gets $1. He also has an ability, -1 abolition card cost during action phase. These are the abolitionist cards, and there's costs associated to these cards. These cards are going to help us in this course of the game, but there are these red cards that are bad stuff. So the preacher, his special ability is he can buy something from here at -1 the cost. So he can buy this for $1 instead of 2. He can buy this for $1 instead of 2, and then $2 instead of 3. And he can actually get these for free if he wants, but he can only do it for 1 of the cards. Okay, so I think it's important that we get rid of the red card, and the reason why is because at the end of the round, these cards actually shift down. For the 1 to 2 player game, we actually shift down 2 cards. Okay, so we get rid of these 2 and move everything down. We refill the deck, the line there. In the regular game, you just take out this first card. But when you take out those cards, you lose them. So the useful cards, you lose them. You can't buy them and use them. But with the red cards, it would trigger the bad effects. We have upcoming a Nat Turner Slave Rebellion. If support tokens have been purchased by the group, return 1 to the currently activated action token roll. So what this is saying is if we purchase those $10 support tokens, we have to return 1 back to the board. We do not have any purchase at the moment. So actually this bad card may not be bad for us. So okay, let's take a look at the other ones. This one is Liberty Hill and it allows us to move 2 slaves, 1 spot each, and purchase a token at full cost. Let's take a look at the rest of the options. We have Theodore Weld, who allows us to move 1 slave from any plantation to a southern space with no effect. The effect that it speaks of here is the slave catcher effect. Every time we move a slave, it would trigger a reaction from the slave catcher. And I'll talk about how that works when I move my slaves, but this is a good one. Let's see, the St. Catharines, Ontario, move 1 slave from a large northern city to Canada. Oh, that's helpful, but we do not have any slaves in the northern cities, so not at this moment probably. And finally, the Liberator plays 1 card in the abolitionist queue back on top of the current age's abolitionist deck. So for our first action, let's use our 3-1 token and move 3 slaves 1 space each. Let's talk about the effects of the slave catcher when a slave moves. For example, let's say the slave moves here. It's going to be on the route of the yellow slave catcher, and it is going to trigger the attention of that slave catcher. That means the slave catcher, the yellow one, he heard something about slave being in this area, so he's going to move 1 spot towards that area. If the slave catcher lands on the slave, so for example here, this cube moves up to this spot, it triggers this brown slave catcher. He would actually move on to the same spot as the slave, and he would catch him. If the slave's caught, he would move on to the slave's lost board, and so that would contribute to that slave count, which might make us lose the game. So the idea is you do not want slaves to be on the same spot as a slave catcher. You want to be sort of playing around with this. It's a big logic puzzle. You want to be thinking about where you want to move the slaves in order to move the slave catchers back and forth. So for the first move, I'll move the slave up here, and it's not on any route, so it doesn't trigger anybody. This guy, he will move up here. The yellow slave catcher, here's something here in this area of the country. He moves actually from the starting spot here into here. So from Rochester into Cleveland. And for the third one, I think I would move, let's do this person here. And that would be our 3-1 moves. This one gets discarded. We'll purchase this card, which allows us to move 2 slaves 1 move, and purchase a token at full cost. Because of the preacher's ability, he gets to buy that for free, because he gets to buy stuff at -1, and that card was $1. And so let's do that now. 2 slaves, 1 spot. For the 2 moves, let's move this slave up to St. Louis. One very important part of this game is the money that's on that spot. So every time you move a slave into a city with a dollar value, you actually get that much money. So $2 going to the preacher. That move triggered the purple slave catcher to move 1 spot towards the slave on the purple route. You probably know where I'm heading with this. I want to get money to buy the support token. And so the second move I want to do is along this one. So this slave is going to move up to Ripley. That's $1 going to the preacher. And that would trigger the red slave catcher to move down 1 to Cincinnati. Now we can purchase a token full cost, and we happen to have $10 from all those efforts. So I'm going to spend all $10 that I have and buy the first support token. For the station master, she gets $1 for her action phase as part of her ability, and she can move one slave catcher one less space during the action phase. The first thing the station master will do is buy this red abolitionist card, because now that we've purchased a support token, this would trigger at the end of round, and we don't want that to happen. So I will spend $1 and get rid of this red card. Next, we're going to use this 3/1 token with 3 slaves, 1 space each. Let's move the slave up. The slave up here. That's 1, that's 2, and the third one I'm going to move to Charleston. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slaves in the green areas. And so I think it would be a good time to fundraise. Actually, I always have a question about the colors of the board, and if anybody can help me out, that would be great. And what my problem is, sometimes there are parts of the board that's green, and this city has the green shaded area as well in the background, but this city, it's technically within this green area of the board, but the shading at the back is not green. I don't think I should be counting this spot towards the fundraising goal, because that probably is not counted, I guess, for the fundraising purposes as a green spot, because the background is not shaded green. I don't know, I'm not sure. But let's fundraise. We're gonna spend our fundraising token, and we lose this token. And what that gives us is $1 per slave on a green southern space or city. And so, as I just said, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And probably we don't count this because it's not shaded green. So that's $5 going to the station master. And I think that's all I want to do for her. Let's do the next phase, which is the slave market phase. So this is where bad stuff happen. We need to deliver slaves from the bottom slave market cart to the plantations. We already know there was going to be 6 slaves coming in from this slave market. So let's place the 6 onto the board. You can pick and choose where you put, which plantation you put the slave in. So we have 3 options. I'm going to put some more on this side because there's a lot of space there. 3 here. Let's do 2 here. And 1 more. Let's do the last one. Let's do the last one here as well. Finally, we have the lantern phase. Sort of the end of the day kind of thing. Discard a card if it is in the rightmost space of the abolitionist queue, and then refill and pass the lead player lantern token clockwise. So lantern token goes to station master. For the solo or 2-player game, we actually get rid of 2 cards instead of just 1. But in this case, no issues there. We have both cards moved out. And then these slide down, and we refill 2 more. So we have Lane, Theological Seminary, and another opposition card, 1850 Compromise. So that was the first round. We've managed to move some slaves up a little bit. We've purchased a support token, and actually the slave market needs to move now. On the next round, we have 4 slaves coming in, and whoa, the card that we just revealed has 7 slaves. And that's it for the night, I think. I hope that was somewhat entertaining to watch. As I said, this is a bit of a serious subject. I think when you lose a slave, you do feel sort of the heaviness and the sadness. The game feels also very tight and a lot of fun in itself, in the puzzle aspect to play. So I hope that didn't turn anybody off, and you guys will tune back in for the next episodes, because I do want to show you a bit more, some of the more variety of the cards and what happens in the later periods of the game. Alright, have a good day or evening, everybody, and I shall see you in my next video. Take care.